Welcome back to Beach Chair Chats. My name is Brian here. It's exciting because this season two is underway. This is episode one, and I'm excited for this new season. And I have a great guest. I've gone international once again. And here's Colum Cronin from over in Dublin, Ireland. How are you doing today, Colum?
Not too shabby at all, Brian. Delighted to be joining you as the first guest on season two. A bit of an honor there. Um, it is a beautifully, unseasonably, even though it's summer, we are having something of a heat wave in Ireland. So usually, me wearing a Hawaiian shirt would be stick out a little bit, but no, not over the last few weeks.
What do you say hot? How hot is it there? Are
Oh,
you
okay. So
Celsius or Fahrenheit? Do you guys use Celsius or Fahrenheit?
we generally use Celsius, but I'm familiar enough with Fahrenheit. Now, hot by Irish standards, right? That means we are in say the 80s. That's like generally we exist as a country
Mhm.
between 35 and 70, right? It rarely
Okay.
goes below 35 and it rarely goes above 70. But this summer, we've had pretty much a month of weather where now again we're not talking the 90s or 100, but like
No.
up in the high 80s at times.
Yeah, I don't do well. Occasionally here in New England, 80s is about down by the shoreline. It's not too bad. Sometimes if you go inland, it's always a 10 to 15 degree difference. Anytime I leave my office from work, it's like, wow, it's horribly hot. Then I drive home, it's like, it's better. It's 10 to 15 degrees, always cooler. It makes it worth it. But yeah, heat, but you're wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I'm wearing green today just for Ireland and I'm not Irish, but hey. So you sent me some cool photos too of beaches because it is a beach theme. So tell me a little bit about some of those beaches you sent me pictures of before we get into the conversation of what you do.
Yeah, well, the beach. I mean, being in Ireland, I mean, we're famous, I suppose, as a little green island.
Hmm.
But the island part is kind of important because no matter where you are in Ireland, you're never that far from a beach. Obviously,
Yeah.
some of our counties are landlocked, but you're never really that far. And in
Hmm.
in stark contrast to when I used to run study abroad programs, and we'd have students who'd come over and maybe they live in Kansas, and you're a long way from the beach there, Toto.
Yes,
But
you are. Yes, you
um,
are.
that is not the case, obviously. So the beach is somewhere that I've always spent a lot of time,
Hmm.
whether that was growing up at the beach or whether that is now visiting the beach. And yeah, so I sent you on some of the photographs that of, I suppose, the it's a great place to just go for a stroll, either with my buddy Sheriff, my border collie,
Hmm.
or one of the things to kind of to touch on, I suppose, some of the roles that I've had. I used to do a lot of work with international students, and I found weekend walks were a great way to allow the students to get to know Ireland, to get to know Dublin, and to get to know each other, right? Because
Of
if we
course.
go on a walk, there's less pressure. You're not facing the person.
Hmm.
You can talk side by side. You can kind of go at different pace, and for students where maybe English isn't their first language or they're a new country, new continent, getting to know people, it worked. And one of the photos that I sent you is a really long stretch of people on a
I see
beach,
that. Yeah.
and that came about. So I had been doing these a while, and I had run one, and I suppose maybe where social media was starting to get popular, whatever, what are we now, 2026? So we're talking
Yeah.
maybe kind of 2014, where it's
Hmm.
really kicking in and everyone kind of uses it. So I kind of posted there, and I've been over the years prior, I've been doing it. We might get like say 20 students. It was really lovely. And this would have been late August, early September. And the first one I do, again, we got like 25, 30 students. It's great. And then I post up, we're doing it the next week. And I did notice over the course of the week that a lot of people seem to be kind of asking me about it. But people ask you about it, they don't show up. Things come up at a weekend, especially for students. So I rock up to the train station because in Dublin we've a light rail system that runs along the coast, and um, all of these people are there, and it was a bit like maybe the aliens in Toy Story,
Oh
where
yes, yes.
ooh,
Ooh,
and it was
yes.
like Colum, and I couldn't quite believe how many people we had, and we ended up with about 164 people.
Okay.
We completely took over the train, and we're doing a walk from Greystones to Bray, both kind of beachfront little villages. Bray is probably a town really, and it's all along the coast. And a local photographer in Greystones for the newspaper, just somebody mentioned him. Hey, you should see how many people there are. And so he organized us in that big long line that you
Yeah.
see there, and that was that experience. So I planned for about 20, and I ended up at 164. Right?
Well, that's a good thing. Usually when, I've worked in education, you plan an event, it's like I really hope for everything, and you get like nobody. So that would say that's an achievement nonetheless to get that many people to show up, have a great time, make memories because you are correct. When you go to the beach, there is memories. What inspired the concept of this podcast was that is the idea, the stories that develop, and there's like the innate freedom of exploration, and people just have a good time, and people did, right? And you've had that, and you've making an impact in young people's lives too, which wonderful. But kind of tying into the work you do now, you've been in education for a long time. What's
I have a very long time.
what's been so you work with, I think it's work you said international students, but I see you're at the Center for Belonging and Education, right? Correct?
Yeah, so what that's one of my hats
What are your hats?
is that I so that's a recently more recent piece was founded in March of this year, and so I co-lead at the Center for Belonging in Education, and my day-to-day job is as the student engagement officer at the Marino Institute of Education here in Dublin.
So what is it? So what do you so what's the work like? We've both been in education. How have you seen it evolve? With the student experience, because being there with the students, what are some of the things that they have challenges with? Like you mentioned social media. Social media is blowing up to what it was in 2014, where it was like this social media. Now it's different. Do you see with belongingness, like do you see the challenges that students face, even over at Dublin? Like I see it here in the States. What do you see? What do you see there?
Yeah, so I suppose it's an interesting piece because working in student engagement, right? I think sometimes people can hear that and think of it as something like some sort of professional cheerleader, right? Like
That it
I'm
feels
out
like,
with
yeah.
the megaphone and kind of encouraging students in to activities and icebreakers.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not that's not what it is. The job is more about, for me it's more about design, and it's about belonging, and lots has changed, Brian, over the course of 2 decades, right? I started working in education in full time in '04, and
Hmm.
even before that, I suppose I was I was always interested um, in belonging and people finding their place. So we have a program in high school here called the Mehel program. And Mehel is an Irish word, and essentially what a Mehel is if we had farms, right? You, me, and let's say Sheriff had a farm,
Hmm.
and we would go and we if it was harvest time, we would go and help you harvest, and then you would come and help me, and then we'd go to Sheriff's farm. So working together, it makes it a lot easier. So that's a mehel, where you're helping people out at the farm. And mehel then was essentially working with kind of 16, 17-year-olds so that they worked with the younger students, the first years, as
Hmm.
what we call coming into high school. And so I was always interested in that. And from there, I ended up working in the Cork Institute of Technology.
Hmm.
I was finishing my master's. I was a team leader on the metal program, and Henrietta O'Mara, still remember, shout out to Henry. I said, Henry, I have no idea what I'm going to do when I finish this master's thesis. And she said, listen, there's this student support team in CIT. This guy named Kieran O'Driscoll runs it. You should give Kieran a call. So I did. I gave Kieran a call that Monday and I said, Kieran, I hear you run a student support team. Can you tell me a little bit about it? So he did. I said, that sounds really interesting. And he said, tell me a little bit about you. So I gave him a brief overview. He said, yeah, I'd give you an interview. I said, great. When? He said, now. And so I hopped on a bus and went out to Bishopstown. And I became the first non-CIT grad to work on their student support team. And that
Oh.
was my foray into it. What I have seen since then, a number of different things. Because I worked with international students. I used to run a study abroad program. And here's an example of a tangible thing that has changed. When back in 05, 06, when students, when they met something new, right, it
Mm.
was weird. But weird is, I don't understand that. Tell me a little bit about it.
Mm.
Now, when they meet something new, it's creepy. But
Yeah.
everything is creepy, Brendan.
Yeah.
And that's fear is what
Hmm.
that is, and that is a huge thing that we have to contend with. And I don't know if you've read Lord of the Flies, but
Mm.
famously, they what's the dirtiest word in the world, and they have four blank letters, and the word is fear, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I think we have to contend with, and I've seen a big change in it, and that impacts on belonging, and that impacts on community, and that impacts on students connecting. And the other piece where that is a huge change is the amount of time available to students, because the cost of living and the increase in the cost of living, and I know this is an issue in the States
Oh,
because I get
yes.
over frequently, um, students used to have time to linger on campus, to hang out, to make friends.
Hmm.
And that was part of the college experience. And now an awful lot of that has been taken away because students are working and they have to work. And the money that, and not to say I worked, but I worked weekends, and that
Hmm.
money allowed me then to, to live and socialize. Now the money is going on the petrol, the gas to
Hmm.
allow them to drive to campus. And we have students who live, an inordinate distance. We have one student who lives down in Wexford and
Hmm.
drives about 2.5 hours every day. That
Good
student
Lord.
leaves home at about 5 in the morning, drives, gets to campus at 7:30, sleeps in their car for an hour until 8:30, and then goes to class. Now
Wow.
that student wants to belong,
Yes.
but it's not structurally possible for them to stay around in the evening time.
Hmm.
So when activities would traditionally take place, like what do they do? Because again, if they're leaving home at 5, then they got to be up by 4.
Hmm.
Then what time are they going to bed? What they need to eat? All of those things factor in. So the loss of time has been one of the biggest changes that I have seen, and that has had a huge impact on the student experience. And when it comes to social media, I think it's funny. One of the things that I think gets said a lot is, you hear stuff, oh, students are always on their phone.
Hmm.
And I'm like, this is said at conferences. I say, look around, everybody's on their
Everyone's
phone.
on their phone.
And social media definitely became a phenomenon, and I'm on social media. I think social media can be a good thing,
Hmm.
but that if it enhances your life, doesn't become your life.
Hmm.
um, Students have actually kind of stepped away from traditional social media. We've seen, a drop in it for the first time over the past couple of years. And I suppose the interesting thing, Brendan, we've yet to get real data on this, but the concern would be that they might that and we've seen this in others, right? Because again, this is not just students, it's people, but people are treating LLMs like their best friend.
Hmm.
And a best, but worse than the best friend, it's the best friend who agrees with every idiotic idea that you
Yes.
have, right? And tells you this is a fabulous thing instead of, no, don't do that. And that, I suppose, would be a concern
Mhm.
that we see. And a lot of times students are maybe the victims of the society that we have created. So there can be a piece where you add in that fear and you add in social media and LLMs, right?
Mhm.
People now very often, and I say people as in wider society, chase perfection, that it kind
Mhm.
of kind of exists in a 2D space in 3D, and it never does, right? So Tinder can be an example of that, right? People go on Tinder, you swipe, you get chatting, and in 2D, it's wonderful, right?
Mhm.
Everything's perfect. It's
Oh
not
yeah.
messy. And then you go on a date, and guess what? The person isn't perfect because
Yes.
nobody can be perfect, and it's messy, and you don't share all of the same views. You never should. But people retreat back into a world, then they go home from the date and they're back in, they keep searching for perfection
Mhm.
because the real world is messy, and
Yes, it is.
you've been led by an awful lot of big corporations to
Mhm.
believe that, you know, the online world is a safe space where you
It's
can find happiness.
Well, it's definitely not a safe space because I think
Yeah.
I just read a book called The Anxious Generation, and it is that there's no protection online. We all have the safeguards outside, for kids, and they have all these protections to do this, but online there's nothing, right? You talk about the LLMs, and I don't know if you ever see the TV show South Park. There was a scene where the husband was on ChatGPT or something asking for advice, and his wife is because you just like it because it just kisses your ass all the time because it reinforces it's like, oh, you're the greatest thing. And I've even seen like in private practice work that having people like, oh, I just asked ChatGPT about my diagnosis. I'm like, please stop doing that because it's just going to feed you this stuff to just kind of make you feel it better, right? Even though you might actually need help. But a couple of things you talked about too. You talked about time and kind of going into that. It is true, even the cost of education for students even to live on campus nowadays is ridiculous. They can't even afford to pay housing. And so a lot of students are living off campus. They're disengaged from the campus community. They're working full time or part time. I work at a community college, same thing. And yeah, the sense of belonging is hard. But also you talk about fear of the unknown. I mean, I worked at Yale for a bit, and that was back in 2015, and I started to see that shift, right, of students afraid to take a chance at something. They didn't want to be told no or fail. And so there's that sense of like, how do we break this? How do we get them to say, take the shot, take the risk, failure is okay, it's going to be fine. This is how you learn. And it's tough, but getting that to be a reality for people to say, get offline, live in the present, be there, and sensory just development. It's just lacking with that 2D kind of thing. You just text, 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 lack of emotion. And yeah, it's a tough place. It's a tough place to be,
Mm-hmm.
because college is definitely different from when you and I were probably in school. There was, I think, Facebook just showed up when I graduated college. I think it was the Facebook, and you had to have an EDU account just to be on it. But it's definitely evolved. Lots of misinformation, things like that, and it's there. But even education too. Do you ever see now students you work with there internationally? Do you see anybody like hesitant about wanting to go over to the States to get an education? Not to get too political on this thing, but there's lots of things happening in the US that might cause pause. Do you see students not wanting to come to the US because of things?
Yeah, it is definitely a thing that has happened, and again, you go back to fear,
Hmm.
and some of it is real and some of it is imagined. I mean, you look at television, right, and it's, TV news in particular is war, death, plague, famine, war, death, plague, famine,
Hmm.
and you look out the window and the sun is shining and your neighbors
Yes.
playing with their kids, and I do think most people are good people, but there is a massive rise in fear, and some of it again is justified. So when they hear about the visa pieces and they hear about safety
Hmm.
concerns, yeah, I mean, I would have worked with significant numbers of students from India. And the goal for a huge number of them was they came to Dublin because we've a pretty good tech industry, but Silicon Valley is obviously where they want to be. So
Hmm.
the plan was go to Ireland, get a master's, work in Dublin, Silicon Docks as it's referred to, and then go to Silicon Valley. And that there's still obviously look, and as somebody who visits America is very fond of your country.
Hmm.
I there's still plenty of people going over, but there is a hesitancy definitely over the last few years. And um, you know, some of that will come from the students themselves, some of that will come from parents. And
Hmm.
you were saying about just about in relation to risk, and in relation to parent, like some of it comes from the fact that parents intervene in every part of things now,
Hmm.
right? And because universities, because fees, right? You talked about
Yeah.
the increase in fees, because things are so expensive, and universities treat students in many ways like customers. And guess what? The customer is always right. So then you
Hmm.
allow the parent to intervene, and now you've created a monster in that. And the other piece about the piece where they're not willing, or they're afraid of failure, it's because they've never seen failure model. Like go
Hmm.
back to the financial crisis of '08, which for a
Hmm.
huge number of them obviously was the kids who are turning 18 now are just being born into that. So after that, think about the fact that the people who caused that mess, nothing happened to them.
Nope.
Nothing happened to any of them. And think about the way in which even in recent years the stock market has only gone up, right, while people are losing their jobs, but the
Hmm.
stock market continues to go up.
Hmm.
And on the political side of things, but whatever side of the divide, there aren't consequences for bad behavior.
Yes.
And so they've never seen failure modeled. And
Hmm.
if it and that that is something that comes down then to them, and they don't see it. And um company like movies cannot fail now because there's so much money invested, and the
Hmm.
same with all. So it seeps into every aspect of society, and that in turn impacts on those students. So I think what you've got to try to do is to create conditions where they can fail, and there's a safety net, right there.
Yeah.
You got to almost create it so that some of them definitely will fail, but at least the safety net is there. But I get why they are where they're at with it, because they've just never seen it and the consequences for it. Again, remember, you and I, we arrived, right? We were sold. There was a social contract.
Hmm.
Okay, you worked hard, you went to school, you came out, you got a job, you got a house. Happy days, right? That's the way it was working for a lot of these students who are graduating now. The idea of home ownership, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it stateside, the
Hmm.
figures in the last week, the number of people who are living at home with their parents, and we
Hmm.
see the same piece in Ireland. And that in turn has an impact, and that in turn has an impact on how you view society and how you view authority and
Hmm.
how you feel whether you should interact in any way, shape, or form, and get involved. Because if the social contract is broken, and you don't feel that you need to buy in, or why should you buy in because you were let down by it,
Yeah.
well, that has real consequences.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's an interesting world. Yeah, you talk about, the contracts with that, and even just mentioned like living with parents, these taking that chance and taking risk, going out and doing this, and holding, some kind of consequences of decisions that's, students make, or we all make, because we know that every time we do something, there's going to be, like I said, there's no modeling of consequences or failure, right? And so when you do fail something, well, it's not a me, it's a you thing. I didn't do something wrong. You made this mistake. You didn't teach me right, or you forgot to do this. It's not my fault, right? Ownership and accountability is a huge thing, um, for the generation, but for all people. I think there is that lack of that. I think there's always that level of innateness that I am perfect, like I said, going back to that, and right, right. But I want to flip the script a little bit too, because you mentioned just a change in narrative. Because before we run out of time here, you say you come back to stateside often. You're a big football fan. And
I
you've been to
am.
4 Super Bowls? Did you go to the last one? No, you guys, you're a Denver Broncos fan.
I am, and I've been. I was really fortunate. So I grew up, Brian, at a time they started showing NFL highlights on
Hmm.
TV over here, and the games they were on a Monday night. But when they initially started showing it, it wasn't the day before. It was 8 days before.
Hmm.
Okay.
Oh wow.
So different world. But there was this team in these beautiful kind of the orange and
The blue,
the kind
yeah.
of blue, and a number seven who was running
Okay.
around here, there, and everywhere. That was John Elway, and I fell
Johnny.
in love with the Denver Broncos. And
Hmm.
um I have been a football fan ever since. And then a group of friends and I started the Irish NFL show, and we were really fortunate. It took off, and we got to talk to people. Got Kevin O'Connell, head coach of
Hmm.
the Vikings, and
Yeah.
Joe Shane, who's general manager with the Giants, and various others. I will say, when it comes to interviews, a lot of the time the radio guys are the guys who are most interesting. The guys who do this,
Oh, I'm sure the color
and who have
commentary.
radio
Yeah.
shows, yeah, they can, because they're so good at telling stories.
Oh yeah.
So Sean Prendergast, who's with the Texans, just absolutely phenomenal guy, and many others. And I was lucky, as it was. Then people would come to Dublin and they'd reach out and they'd want to be shown around. So I got to know people, but I also got to go to the Super Bowl and Super Bowl week and the lead up to it, and meet
Nice.
teams and see the razzmatazz and the game itself. But one thing that was tangentially related to it was 2022. So after in LA, and it's the Bengals against the Rams, and I suppose
Hmm.
LA wants to show off after COVID
Hmm.
and kind of welcome everyone back. So they hired out Universal Studios
Okay.
just for NFL media. And so this huge theme park that usually holds probably 30,000 people, I'm not entirely sure, and it's hired out for like 1,500 people max. And again, some people don't end up going. They also had free food and drink, so a lot of people were like, "Oh, free drinks."
Hmm.
When I went on every ride in
Really?
Universal Studio because there were no lines. I went on the Harry Potter ride
Oh,
that people queue
nice.
up for hours. I got to go on that, and I walked, and I went back on and did it again. So that is one of the abiding memories I have of going to the
Hmm.
Super Bowl, is the fact that I got
Not
to
the
go on the
game.
Transformers ride. Now the
Nice.
games were great as well,
Yeah.
but that was a nice little bonus.
Well, I mean, well, the NFL too. They've come over to Dublin, right? Have they come over to Ireland?
They have, yeah. They were here for the first time last September, and the football, the popularity definitely has expanded internationally. The NFL are really pushing it,
Hmm.
and they're going to be in Australia this September.
Nice.
And they've talked openly about that. I think what they would like to try and do is ultimately have like a 24-hour day where there's football on. So it starts, in
Hmm.
Australia, and then it moves maybe to Japan, and then it moves across into Europe, and it eventually moves East Coast game, West Coast game, and potentially Hawaii to finish things out.
I will say that does definitely kills my productivity on Sunday when it happens. Like I turn on oh, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. There's a game on. Oh, then they got the kickoff. That I think it's the 1 o'clock kickoff. And then there's a 4:30 kickoff, and then there's the primetime game in the evening. Yeah, Sundays are I'm not productive. Then of course college football on Saturdays. So anytime in the fall, I am just dead to the world because I got my college football, then I have Thursday night football, then I have Monday night football, then occasionally there's a Wednesday. Like, what are you doing? I'm never getting anything done because usually, like you think overseas, like people say, oh, football, like soccer and stuff, and the NFL, like actually progressing the game is pretty cool to see they go international because they talk about basketball being international baseball, but football is really doing the thing, and it's probably the biggest moneymaker as far as sports go in the United States. But I will say this, hopefully your Broncos have a chance to turn it around. They had I felt really bad for Bo Nix, so bad for that kid. I did say this before we wrap up. He was the one guy I wanted the Patriots to draft because I thought this kid's a baller. He's a competitor. He's going to go out and win. I mean, we got Drake May. Turned out to be okay, right? But I thought this guy is going to be a good player, and he turned out to do exactly that just because he is that competitor. It just felt bad that broken ankle foot thing that happened. It just it was tough.
Yeah, definitely, definitely unfortunate, but we'll see. We'll see how they brought a lot of guys back. So fingers crossed, we'll see how this season goes.
Well, it's like I said, it'll be here before you know it. Then I'll get to turn on my TV show Hard Knocks, which is a fun show to watch on HBO. And then there's also a show called Quarterback on Netflix. Again, all the football, all the time. So, but Colum, it's been wonderful having you on, kicking off season 2 of this little endeavor that I have going on here. I appreciate the Hawaiian shirt thing going on there as well, bringing the theme, bringing the vibe of this. But it's been great having you on, and I hope you enjoy your upcoming season and we'll stay cool over there.
Thanks very much, Brian. Great chatting to you. Really enjoyed it, and all the best to you for the rest of season two.